everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we're the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
Man, Seth, you sound so much better than last week when you were sick. How do you do it?
Sound exactly the same. You didn't say that's right.
I'm pretty sure I did say that's right.
You didn't. No, you didn't.
Well, I'll say it now. That's right.
That's right. Yeah, you just immediately cut right into comment that we're doing the same joke.
Sometimes we gotta get moving, sometimes.
We gotta get rocking and rolling. Sometimes it's 3 a.m. and we're on our 4th episode recording and we're just trying to close this out before we fall asleep.
I was going through our old notes. I was going through our really old notes from when we started.
Time and Ternium notes.
You had a note in one of our oldest documents that said we could record for 5 hours straight and then we'll have a bunch of episodes done.
We could. That was a good
we
note.
We never did that.
Well, we could do it. Still, it's not. It was just a suggestion. It wasn't.
I know.
It wasn't. I do like occasionally perusing the old notes. They've gotten a lot better because we've been saving them off annually now, which helps with the speed. Because for the first notes were I think 2 or 3 years old, and let me tell you, when you're updating a document that is thousands of pages long. It gets to be a little slow.
I want to get it bound.
we should bound them all
War
together.
Piece. Yeah.
Yeah, we could sell it, and then we'll shut the podcast down. We'll say, here's the complete collection of our podcast notes. And then people be like, isn't this just you just read articles you find from the internet to us? And we say, yes. We do.
I mean, isn't that what a lot of podcasts are?
That's true. It's true. Ours has a great banter, though.
Yes. That's what we provide, the witty bants.
Yeah, at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah, at the beginning and end. The rest is just Wikipedia summary.
Wow.
Anyway, today, before we get into our recently plays, I did want to make note that today is actually technically a episode that was recommended to us by a listener of the show. And I'm not going to say their username because I don't know if I don't want to just randomly shout out a person who may or may not want to be.
But if you check our comments on our YouTube, you may find out who it is.
Yes.
It did come from our YouTube. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. But they recommended this episode for us to do. And so we're doing it. Hopefully they like it.
And if they don't, we'll never hear from them again.
They'll say that's the last time I recommend an episode to these schlubs.
Well, that being said, Seth, what have you been recently playing?
So recently I've been playing a game called The Rat Line, which was developed and published by Owlskip Games and was released back March 17th, 2026. I've been looking for a game that's similar to The Root Trees Are Dead, which is a great puzzle game. If you haven't played The Root Trees Are Dead and you want a good puzzle game, I recommend checking that game out. It's a lot of fun. And then you'll be doing what I'm doing and looking for games such as Confidential Killings and The Rat Line, which are games like Root Trees Are Dead, but different. So I've been playing The Rat Line, which is a game where you are trying to put together a corkboard of people's names and professions, and they have something in common, and that something is they were all Nazis. And you put it together and you provide their names to a service that has hired you to get their information, and then those people end up dead. So they face justice, and it's interesting because you have to use a Rolodex and call people on the phone to interview them. You have to take some documents together and put them together to look through photographs to see if you can identify people, make some deductions. One of the cool part was that one of the identifications, you had to go back to an earlier case to pull earlier documents to say this is the other person in the photo, the other person on the other side of this photo. So the first tutorial puzzle, you are trying to figure out somebody who owns a business, and that somebody ends up selling some items to a pawn shop, and a number of cases later you're trying to figure out who the pawn shop owner was, and so you have to go back to that photograph of the pawn shop and try to identify who that owner was based on the information that you're learning. So it's kind of cool. I like the style, the artwork, the puzzles. They're a lot of fun, and I'm able to play it for it's one of those games where I just get hooked and I'm just trying to figure out what's going on and to find those Nazis, as it were. But yeah, so that's The Rat Line. Ratline has been a good time. Zach, what about you? What have you recently been playing?
Seth, recently I've been playing a game that I've already played recently, well, a while ago. Some time ago, I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, a game released in 2020 from Sucker Punch and published by Sony, and I kind of fell off of it, and recently I've started replaying it because I want to finish it so I can get into the sequel, Ghost of Yotai. Ghost of Tsushima is a game where you play as a samurai during the first Mongol invasion of Japan in 1270s. You play as Jin Sake, a member of the clan Sake, who is a samurai and ward to Lord Shimura, the steward of the island of Tsushima. It's a pretty great game. It has a lot of influence from samurai films like those directed by Masaki Kobayashi and Akira Kurosawa, very influenced by things like Lone Wolf and Cub, and just the actual lore and legends of things like samurai and Ronin. In many ways, you're playing as a samurai who kind of feels more like a Ronin sometimes, but I haven't gotten to later parts of the game that I think got spoiled for me. But yeah, I do like it a lot, and I'm pretty close to finishing it. I'm probably like 2/3 of the way through it, so I still got like one chunk of the island left to explore, and I assume I'm probably maybe like 6 to 7 hours maybe left to play, but once I'm done with that, I'm going to pick up Ghost of Yotai, which I've been really excited to play, but I kind of wanted to hold off to play Ghost of Yotai until I finish Ghost of Tsushima. It's a really good game. It's just such a big island to explore. It takes a while to explore, and I like to take my time, mostly because it's a pretty game too, so sometimes I just like to walk places, but that kind of will make the game take longer if you walk everywhere.
Oh, instead of fast traveling?
Yeah, instead of fast traveling or even horseback riding. I don't mind horseback riding, but it feels like every time I horseback ride, I get stopped by random encounters with bandits. So sometimes I'm just like, if I just walk, I'll see the bandits in advance and I can avoid them. So
that's fair. You just run over the bandits on your horse.
I could do that. But in any case, that's what I've been recently playing. So somewhat relevant though, because today we're talking about Shinobi, who is not a samurai, but he is a ninja. And ninjas and samurais go hand in hand in terms of their cultural impact in cinema and video games. And we're talking about Shinobi, again, thanks to a listener of the show who recommended we do talk about Shinobi. So here's that episode, listener. Hope it's your favorite. If it's not, sorry. Before we get into the history of Shinobi, in terms of memories of Shinobi, I remember playing one of the Shinobi games for the Sega Genesis. I believe it was Revenge of Shinobi, which was considered one of the better Shinobi games. That's the one for the Sega Genesis. And I actually played it not on a Sega Genesis, but on this weird handheld thing that I bought in high school that allowed me to play Sega Genesis games on the go. It actually included a cartridge slot that you could lock in cartridges, but one of the built-in games was Revenge of Shinobi, and I took it on a trip with me to Canada and played it on the bus ride up to Canada, that and Sonic and Knuckles, and I really like Revenge of Shinobi. It's a fun game, but that's my memories of playing any of the Shinobi games. Seth, what about you? Do you have any memories of playing any Shinobi games?
I think I've tried to play it a couple of times. It's tough, isn't it?
It is tough, yeah. It's not as hard as like Ninja Gaiden, but it is pretty hard.
I'm getting Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi confused.
Don't worry, that happens to me all the time.
Let me take a look here and see what Shinobi actually looks like. It kind of looks like a little bit like Double Dragon.
I mean, in the sense that it's a like side-scrolling game, but Double Dragon's a beat-em-up, and Shinobi's more of like a hack and slash. Like you're throwing things and slashing people.
Yeah, I just meant like the early.
Oh, but it's also, yeah, it's set in like a city, so.
Yeah, interesting. I don't actually have a lot of memories in regards to Shinobi, especially since I had to look it up, and I was thinking that this was going to be about Ninja Gaiden.
Maybe next time we'll do an episode on Ninja Gaiden.
I think we did Ninja Gaiden.
We might have. Ninja Gaiden's a really good game too, though.
That's where you run around with your little sword, you stab people,
yes,
and you
yes.
jump, and
it's very difficult.
So my memories are low, as it were. I'm sure I've seen the game, but that's probably where I'm at.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, to get into the history of Shinobi, it was a game developed by Sega's AM Research and Development #1 team, also known as Sega AM1. This team, we've probably talked about before, but as a reminder, was a team that started life sometime after Rikiya Nakagawa joined Sega in 1983. Some of the earliest games he would develop were games like Ninja Princess, Alien Syndrome, and Choplifter. All pretty good games. At least Alien Syndrome and Choplifter are. I've never played Ninja Princess, but it sounds cool. Sometime after the release of the game Power Drift, Sega made the decision that they were going to split their development team. They would create separate teams called Amusement Machine Research and Development Teams, also known as AM teams, with each taking on different projects and headed by different development heads. Nakagawa would become the head of AM1, hence why I mentioned him. But these AM teams were clever of Sega. It allowed them to basically divide and conquer on projects. So between the years of 1983 and 1990, they would be able to release tons of some of their better known titles like Altered Beast, Alex Kidd, but they also were able to put focus into hardware, like releasing the Sega Master System or the Sega Genesis or the Sega System arcade units. So basically the AM teams were designed to focus on, some were focusing on software, some were focusing on hardware, some were focusing on arcade titles, some were focusing on exclusively console titles. That's basically how they functioned. The Shinobi team would be under AM1, and the game's director was Yutaka Sugano, who would lead Team Shinobi and would kind of head the project in the direction it went. Now, as we alluded to, some people might confuse Shinobi for Ninja Gaiden. In fact, I confused Shinobi with Ninja Gaiden.
As did I.
And for a very long time, I always thought Shinobi was kind of the Sega Ninja Gaiden. But in fact, Shinobi came out a year before Ninja Gaiden and also took a lot of its inspiration from a game called Rolling Thunder from Namco. According to an article that I was reading from NintendoJojo.com, much of Rolling Thunder's gameplay would help inspire Shinobi, such as the main character being this agent trying to avoid various hooded enemies while dodging a stream of projectiles. In Rolling Thunder, these stream of projectiles are bullets. In Shinobi, the stream of projectiles is shurikens, and also bullets. Shinobi would change up a couple elements though, one being the enemy variety, and the other being, if you get hit once in the Shinobi for the arcade game, you die. However, something I was reading about also, and I forgot to include it in my notes, is that this one-hit death thing is very, well known about the original Shinobi for the arcade. The one-hit kill might actually have been an accident that they kept in the game because there are certain enemies that when you hit them will not cause you to die depending on how you hit them. Like if you're jumping into an enemy, sometimes you'll get knocked back, but you'll still live. So it seems to be potentially a glitch or just either an oversight in one way or the other. I couldn't find details on this, but from what I was reading from one person theorizing, they're like, I think it might have been a mistake to have it a one-hit kill that they just kept in as kind of a happy accident because this was an arcade game, so it allowed you to rake in the yen and the quarters if you're dying all the time.
Yeah, and so one could even say that Ninja Gaiden was the answer to Sega's Shinobi. Shinobi really was developed as a way to capitalize on a pop culture juggernaut of the 1980s, ninjas. Everybody loved ninjas. The Bad Movie Bible YouTube channel does a great job at breaking down the sheer amount of ninja films that were released in the 1980s, largely thanks to the cut and paste techniques that were perfected by Hong Kong film directors like Godfrey Ho and companies like Filmark and IFD. The technique involved taking footage from lesser-known, incomplete, or abandoned Asian action films and adding in new footage with new actors. Guess what? They'll continue to do this for a long time because it's how Power Rangers did their thing. But the ones that were done in the 80s were way cheaper and not as good as the ones that were done by Saban with Power Rangers. In fact, between 1985 and 1989, there were over 80 films released within this using this method, which is a lot of films to be released in a time period, all using possibly very similar footage.
Yes, let me tell you a bit about these films because I love these films. First, I want to recommend Bad Movie Bible, great YouTube channel, and his Shinobi Geddon video is like an hour long and fantastic to watch and just to have in the background. He talks about how Godfrey Ho went about this process of acquiring lesser known Asian films, a lot of times from the Philippines or Korea, and he would take the footage of action happening and they would have these kind of cheap looking costumes, and then he would refilm stuff with people in very similar costumes, but then add in sequences of new characters talking to each other. And one of the techniques of doing this was telephones. So what he would do is he would find scenes in movies where people are on telephones, and then he would shoot new scenes of people on telephones, and it looks like the new people are talking to the old people. He also added in white actors a lot to his films, one of them being Richard Harrison, who was well known mostly for these movies and because he has a great mustache. But apparently a lot of these actors would be picked at random, as in people from IFD would go to the market, look for people that were white, and say, hey, want to be in a movie? And they would say, hey, how much does it pay? And then they would film scenes with that movie, and that would be the only role they might have been in. I recommend checking out Ninja Terminator. You can actually find a Blu-ray copy of it from Vinegar Syndrome, and it has a scene of Richard Harrison talking to a character over the phone, and his phone is a Garfield phone, and that's what makes it the best scene ever.
Richard Harrison was in a lot of movies.
He sure was.
I was just looking at a little bit about him. Though his last movie that he was in the erotic thriller Angel Eyes in 1993.
Yes, it was. But man, Richard Harrison and his fantastic mustache.
Yes, Ninja Dragon, Ninja Terminator, Ninja Thunderbolt, Ninja Silent Assassin. Just put ninja, then some other combination of words, and there you go. You have a movie.
Ninjas were popular in the 1980s.
Yes, and speaking of pop culture, Shinobi contains various references to pop culture, such as pictures of Marilyn Monroe in the background, and an enemy that kind of looks like Spider-Man, which we'll talk more about later. The original Shinobi was released in November of 1987 for the Sega System 16 arcade. It would be quickly ported over to the Master System, with that port being released in 1988. One significant change to the Master System version was that a health gauge was implemented, so you were no longer died with one shot. You instead had a health gauge because they couldn't take your quarters at home, because if they could, you would not have a health gauge. And another change was that the hostage rescues were now optional, but you could earn upgrades to your weapons or health gauge while doing them.
Now, the gameplay of Shinobi is, because it's an arcade game, it plays on an arcade cabinet using an 8-way directional joystick, and there are 3 buttons. These buttons correspond to jumping, attacking, and a special ninjutsu ability. Your starting weapon is shurikens. You have an infinite amount of shurikens. You can just throw them forever. If someone gets close to you, you will use your close range attack, which could be a punch or a kick. If you rescue certain hostages in the game, you can upgrade your attack to a gun, which is it looks like a rocket being shot, but I guess it's just supposed to be a gun. And your close range attack changes from a punch/kick to a katana. Your ninjutsu ability is only used once per stage and will act as a screen clearing attack, such as creating a tornado or a thunderstorm, or there's like a doppelganger thing you do. Now, there are bonus stages in the game. These bonus stages are used to collect extra points, and these are first-person perspective segments where you throw shurikens at ninjas who are rapidly approaching you. The more you kill, the better your score, which is the motto of a lot of arcade games. The plot of Shinobi is pretty straightforward. It involves a ninja whose name is Joe Musashi. Joe is tasked with stopping the organization Zed from kidnapping children. There are 5 missions in the game, with each mission consisting of different stages. The first mission consists of 3 stages, and the rest consist of 4. You are given an objective at the beginning of each mission, which features the enemy boss, and then you are tasked with tracking down the enemy boss and defeating them. And along the way, you can rescue the hostages. And that's pretty much Shinobi. I mean, it's an arcade game. It's fairly straightforward. Really no major plot thing going on, as they need the plot to be told within an attract mode. So Seth, how did Shinobi do?
As an arcade cabinet, Shinobi was incredibly successful. It became one of the highest grossing conversion kits in 1988. According to a 1988 issue of Cashbox magazine, Shinobi would be awarded the most played conversion kit by the Amusements and Music Operators Association as part of their awards for jukeboxes, games, and cigarette vending machines. In 1989, an article in Cashbox would note that the game would receive the award again that year, along with Tetris, Capcom Bowling, Cabal, and Ninja Gaiden. So in fact, Ninja Gaiden, here it comes. As a reminder, the conversion kit would be, if you had an arcade, you could buy new games to swap out old games, and using the same shell of a cabinet, and you could redo the marquee and all the paneling pretty easily to be able to convert it over to a new game that would be more popular, such as Shinobi.
Yeah, the Sega 16 arcade machine was, a lot of the games released on it were conversion kits, and largely because how they operated was the Sega 16 arcade machine was primarily a motherboard that you attached daughter boards to, and these daughter boards would be the games. So you would buy a daughter board that you could usually just slot in. Sometimes they looked like cartridges, and you just slotted them into the system, changed up the marquees, and there you go. I do want to say Cashbox was an interesting magazine to peruse because it was largely sold as what I believe to be a trade magazine for people who are in the business of buying arcade cabinets and jukeboxes and cigarette machines. So it does have a list of top selling cigarettes being like, hey, the Marlboros were doing well this year.
I feel feel like the people who buy jukeboxes, arcade, especially during the late 80s, the people who bought jukeboxes, arcade games, and cigarette vending machines were the same person.
Do you also picture a man with a big hat and a cigarette? Because that's who I picture.
I picture somebody who is maybe running a place that's dark, dingy, and full of pool tables.
I don't know if I just picture a man with like, not necessarily, maybe like kind of like a cowboy hat, but like with a cigarette and with like a collared shirt, but the buttons are halfway down.
That's
so
always
like
has to happen.
Massive chest hair is just popping out.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there being like, we got Marlboros, we got Dolly on the juke, and we got Shinobi in the back.
Reviews of Shinobi at the time praised the game, with Computer and Video Games positively reviewing the arcade cabinet and awarding the Master System an 8 out of 10. Dragon Magazine gave the Master System a 4 out of 5 stars, and Sega Pro would give the game 5 out of 5 stars, which, coming from Sega, makes a lot of sense. Since they're like, look at this game that you could play on the Sega System. It's great. 5 stars.
0 stars for Mario.
Yeah, they're like, what about that Ninja Gaiden game that you can't play on the Sega 16? 0 out of 5 stars. Critics at the time cited the game's gameplay, with one review calling it a combination of shoot 'em up and beat 'em up games. So it does kind of look like Double Dragon. A port for the Atari Jaguar was almost developed for the original Shinobi, what would go on to get canceled. The port was done as part of a deal between Sega and Atari due to a lawsuit. In 1992, Atari would sue Sega for copyright infringement. Atari alleged that Sega infringed on the copyright of horizontal scrolling on a video display. The case would be settled in 1994, and part of that settlement, Sega agreed to publish 5 games on the Atari console, with Shinobi being the planned first of 5, though it would go on to be canceled, so they just decided, they were like, you know what, this is a dumb deal, we're just not doing it.
I feel like this was a time period where Atari was definitely on its way out, and they were going through their file cabinets, realized they had a whole bunch of patents, and were like, well, we gotta make money somehow, let's start suing people. Because I think they also sued Nintendo around the same time too.
There was a cross-licensing agreement allowing for 5 games titled to be published on each other's systems annually until the year 2001 was part of the agreement. It was designed to help both companies, but the deal ended up failing to save the Atari Jaguar, which would go get discontinued shortly after it started to fall apart. And only one game compilation, the Arcade Classics, was released for the Sega system as a result. So it wasn't necessarily canceled. The Atari Jaguar was canceled.
Yeah, it failed. Sorry to the Atari Jaguar fans out there. We know you're loud and plentiful. Various other home computer ports were made for Shinobi. In 1989, there was an Amiga, Atari ST, Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, and ZX Spectrum version, all developed by the Sales Curve, and an IBM PC version would be released by Micro Mosaics. There would also be a port by Asmic for the PC Engine, released in 1989, that played very close to the arcade version. Also, like the arcade version, there's no life gauge. An unlicensed port for Shinobi would be released on the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, developed by Tenjin, aka Atari. And this was, again, unlicensed. It used the trick that Tenjin used to bypass the lockout. You can find it out there. It's sometimes a little bit more of an expensive game, but it comes in the black cartridge that Tenjin cartridges come in. Shinobi also spawned a franchise. The immediate sequel would be the arcade game Shadow Dancer, released in 1989. That same year, Revenge of Shinobi released for the Sega Genesis. Revenge of Shinobi is set 3 years after the first game, where Zed has been reformed as Neo Zed. Joe is tasked with stopping the group after they kill his old master and kidnap his bride. The Genesis version is notable for a couple reasons. One, it's considered a great game. It's considered one of the better games on the Sega Genesis, and it's often included in various compilations and stuff like that of top Genesis games. The other reason why it's notable is because it features pastiches of characters like Rambo, the Terminator, Spider-Man, Batman, and Godzilla. Later versions would replace some of these pastiches. Batman got replaced with kind of this devil-looking guy. The Rambo character gets replaced kind of to a generic guy with a gun. The Godzilla creature would get replaced with like a skeleton monster. But the Spider-Man boss would end up becoming a licensed version of the character after Sega licensed Spider-Man for their own Spider-Man game. So when the license for Spider-Man for Sega was done, they updated the Revenge of Shinobi cartridge so that the later revision said Spider-Man as licensed by Marvel Comics. And that means that Spider-Man in Shinobi is arguably a little canon. Maybe part of the Spider-Verse, right? Another version of Spider-Man who is for some reason trying to fight Joe Musashi. The license, though, would eventually expire, right? Sega no longer had their license for Marvel characters, so the license expired, and this prevented Revenge of Shinobi from being re-released for a little bit because it included Spider-Man in it. However, in 2009, the game would finally get re-released as part of a compilation pack of other Sega games, and Spider-Man would get recolored as just pink and doesn't look quite like Spider-Man. He is a pink guy that shoots webs at you now.
Oh, well, he's Pink Man.
Yeah.
It also sounds like he may give you pink eye.
Gross.
In 1990, Sega would release a loose adaptation of Shadow Dancer to the Genesis as Shadow Dancer, The Secret of Shinobi, and that same year, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World would release as a crossover/parody of Shinobi featuring Alex Kidd as the protagonist when Sega was really on to making Alex Kidd their new mascot. In 1991, Cyber Shinobi was released on the Master System, and the GG Shinobi was released for the Game Gear. A follow-up to the Game Gear version, GG Shinobi 2, The Silent Fury, was released in 1992. A direct sequel to the Revenge of the Shinobi released as Shinobi 3, Return of the Ninja Master, for the Sega Genesis in 1993, and Shinobi Legions for the Saturn in 1995. A revival of the game was originally planned for the Dreamcast, but the console would get discontinued and move to the PS2. The PS2 game, Shinobi, which I actually think I have the most memories about, would be released in 2002, because I definitely remember like the cover and all that stuff.
It's got a very distinct
Shinobi.
cover.
Yeah, I remember all of that for Shinobi, and that's the version that I resonate with the most.
Yeah, it's got the guy on the cover with he's holding the katana. And it's got his scarf is like part of the gameplay, I think. Like when you're fighting people in the game, it's like stylized and his scarf is going all over the place.
Yeah. I remember the PlayStation 2 Shinobi more than I remember other games. There would also be a Game Boy Advance game called Revenge of the Shinobi released in 2002. This had nothing to do with the Genesis game of the same name.
Yeah, which is confusing. Now, the PS2 game would get a sequel called Nightshade in 2003, which features a female counterpart to the Shinobi character from the 2002 PS2 game. And for clarification, the 2002 PS2 Shinobi game does not feature Joe Musashi. It's a different ninja, but it's still also called Shinobi. In 2011, Shinobi 3D released for Nintendo 3DS, featuring Jiro Murasashi, the son of Joe Murasashi. And most recently, Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, released in 2025 for Nintendo Switch, PS4/5, Windows, Xbox One/Series X. This is a 2D platformer where you play as Joe Murasashi as you are tasked with defeating different bosses. Fun fact, there was DLC for Shinobi The Art of Vengeance, released this year in April, and this adds new bosses from different Sega games, such as Death Adder from Golden Axe, Goro Majima from Yakuza, Dr. Robotnik from Sonic the Hedgehog.
Fun.
There's like a story reason for why these three very different characters are now fighting this guy who's a ninja, and it's like they're all supposed to be like icons of evil from their dimensions, and you have to like send them back to their dimension by fighting them.
Oh, excellent.
And that will do it for our Shinobi episode. We're going to get into our retro rewind, but before we do, I just want to have last word on Shinobi, unless Seth wants the last word on Shinobi, but that is, Shinobi's an interesting game. It has this kind of long history to it, and I feel bad that I always confuse it for Ninja Gaiden. I think it's the fact that they both have to do with ninjas, but I don't necessarily think one was trying to rip off anyone. I think it's just because ninjas were really popular in the 1980s, and everyone kind of wanted a piece of the ninja money. But maybe I'll actually try to sit down and play through the original Shinobi, or at least the Master System version, and it's been a while since I played Revenge of Shinobi, so maybe I'll pick that up and play it again. But I want to thank the listener for giving the recommendation. Seth, do you have any thoughts on Shinobi before we...
No, but maybe I'll check it out. It sounds like maybe we can play some games, and then it'll come back to me, and I'll be like, oh, I played a F ton of this Shinobi game.
Or at least you'll replay the PS2 version.
That's true. Yeah, yes. For sure.
Now, to get into our Retro Rewind, Seth had me play 1830 Railroads and Robber Barons for MS-DOS, developed by Simtex and published by Avalon Hill. Have you ever wanted to experience the thrill of playing as a rich banker, bidding on stocks and shares of old-timey train companies? Because I sure haven't. But if you have, if this sounds like the game, if this sounds like your kind of game, have I got the game for you. 1830 Railroads and Robber Barons is a video game that feels like a board game that also feels like homework, which, to be fair, if I remember correctly, is what a lot of Avalon Hill games feel like. They kind of feel like homework. I remember I bought Seth an Avalon Hill game. I don't know if he still has it. It was some like Knights game. But I remember when I picked it up and I opened it for the first time to see if all the parts were there, spreadsheets fell out, and I said, this seems like homework.
A Knights game.
Or some Kings game. It is an Avalon Hill game, but I remember getting it for you. It was ages ago. I was in like high school when I got it for you. It's not a video game. It's a board game. Down with the King?
Down with the King.
It was Down with the King. I remember this box art. I 100% gave you this game.
No, you did. I've never owned this game.
I literally gave you this game, but you might have sold it.
I didn't sell it.
Or got rid of it.
No, I've never seen this game.
I remember giving it to you.
Maybe you gave it to somebody else.
No, I remember giving it to you because I specifically bought it because it said Avalon Hill, and I know the history of Avalon Hill in D&D.
Oh, okay.
You don't remember the box art with the guy with the face?
No, not that I.
I'll go looking in your closet of games, see if you still have it.
Okay. Well, I will.
Anyway, if you like homework, maybe you want to play 1830 Railroads and Robber Barons. I wasn't a big fan of it. I had no idea what I was doing. It was like, you want to bid on this thing? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I bought some stuff and I was like, terrible job. But yeah, it was a bad game. Next week, Seth, you can play President-Elect 1988 edition for MS-DOS.
Didn't we play this game for our President's episode?
We talked about it. I don't know if we played it.
Talked about it. Well, maybe we didn't play it. Zach had me play Dungeon Hack, a 1993 RPG game developed by Dreamforge Entertainment, and that's spelled with an I, and published by SSI for MS-DOS. First off, it's a Dreamforge game, so it's obviously going to be a banger. They are the same folks who developed Ravenloft, both Shroud's Possession and Stone Prophet, and they did Menzo Baranzan. And Dungeon Hack is just like those games, but if you took the story out, and it was just RNG dungeons. The game is a roguelike game, so like every time you start a new game, it starts a whole new dungeon that's randomly generated. There's a seed and a random seed generator that you can use you could share your seed with other players so that they can duplicate their dungeon. And you could also play in hardcore mode where you can turn permadeath on, and if you die in the game, it erases all of your save games. It uses 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rules, and in it you're on a quest to get a mysterious magical orb in an ancient dungeon, and that's it. That's the whole like premise. This lady in the beginning says, "Go get this mystical orb," and you go and get it for her, and that's it. You have to go through a dungeon to do it. It's a dungeon crawling game. And it keeps itself pretty light. 100% holds up. It's definitely worth checking out, especially if you like an old school aesthetic. And it gets me a chance to tell everybody that I'm reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, and this game kind of gives me a little bit reminder of that. And that book series is very good. Next week, Zach, you can play Aro and Elmi fighting the Bacteria Gang for MS-DOS.
I'm looking forward to playing that game, Seth. Thank you. Thank you, Seth, and thank you, dear listener, for recommending this episode, and thank you, listeners, for listening. If you have any thoughts on Shinobi, you want to send us any corrections or yell at us because we did a terrible job covering this episode, then let us know at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We're available wherever podcasts can be found, be it Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio. We're available on all the major social media websites such as Facebook and Blue Sky. Look us up, Classic Gaming Brothers, CG Brothers Pod. We're also available on Patreon, and we're available on YouTube. Like and subscribe, and also on our website, classicgamingbrothers.com. That being said, Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
That's right.